Well, Scott started before I joined up with him at, what was it, Cinematique?
The Cinematique in Daytona Beach. It was an experimental theater kind of thing where they showed foreign films and first-run stuff from local filmmakers. And that was kind of nice. And Charlie Carlson from Weird Florida fame, who does the PBS show of the same name, was there with me purveying his book, Weird Florida. And then Charlie joined Rick and I at the Florida Beer Company in Melbourne, which kicked off our Weird and Wild tour. And we did the tasting room there.
And had a blast.
And that was, featuring Swamp Ape beer, which is one of the subjects of my book. Not the beer, the Swamp Ape. But in any event, then from there we went to World of Beer. They've got several locations in Orlando, but we did the one at Dr. Phillips Boulevard. And then we went to Lucy's, which was an experience too in Gainesville.
Yep.
Really cool. They, in addition to serving the Swamp Ape beer there, they actually dreamed up a Swamp Ape burger that they had a special that day on the menu, and it really was incredible. And from there, to satisfy a friend from one of the cryptozoology websites, we stopped in Valdosta for the overnight and had breakfast with him so we could give him the book. And then we went to Peerless Bookstore, wasn't it, outside of Atlanta in Alpharetta. And from there we went to Fort Payne to the Bookshelf,
Fort Payne, Alabama, Bookshelf, etc. Then we went to Gatlinburg, Tennessee, which was an experience because it kind of coincided with an event in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, where there were 75,000 extra people in town. So
I've never actually seen a place where the pastime was pitching a chair on the side of the road and watching the cars drive by.
But that's what they were doing that day.
Yeah, to the tune of we could only do like 1/10 of a mile up the road.
An hour.
At an hour.
But we were at Ripley's Museum in Gatlinburg day before yesterday, and it was an interesting experience. I had never been to Gatlinburg. I'd been to Pigeon Forge. So it's an interesting place. Then yesterday we were in Clarksville, Indiana, at the Falls of the Ohio Museum and Interpretive Center, which is an Indiana State-run place. Nice folks, great museum if you haven't been there.
Yeah, it really was cool.
And today we are here doing this interview. Then at 11 we go to the Chill Cafe in Washington. It's 409 East Main Street, and be there until 3 p.m. This evening we go to Vincennes University's, I believe it's the Shake Memorial Library. Anyway, the main library for the campus at the corner of 2nd Street and Indianapolis Boulevard. And we'll be there at 7 p.m. until between 8:30 and 9, depending on how many cookies they eat early. But tomorrow we go to Bloomington, Indiana, to Howard's Bookstore, and Joy Howard is a joy. She's just an immense personality.
Right.
So come on up there to Bloomington. It's great.
All right. Scott, talk about your book. You've got, of course, the interesting Swamp Ape.
Which is our southern Sasquatch, for people who don't know our local nomenclature. Then I talk about actually 21 different cryptid animals that we find in the state of Florida, which is very unique as cryptid animals go. Most places have 1 or 2, but 21 in one state is virtually unheard of, even in one country. But our subtropical environment supports all kinds of wildlife, including legendary type. And I have stories in there of the chupacabra and the cracker dog killer, and Florida black panthers, which are supposed to not exist, but many people, including myself, have seen them. And various sea monsters, one of which back in the early 60s ostensibly is responsible for the death of 4 people off Pensacola. And Oh, gigantic snakes that even go back through history, not just the boas that everybody's talking about now that are loose in the Everglades. So there's quite a few animals in there to feast on for cryptid fans. And the book was written to be kind of an ecotourism aid, so that people who are interested in these animals can go down and explore the names, the dates, the places, all that stuff is all there. In addition to that, I wrote it with 3 approaches at the end of the stories, except for those where I've actually solved the case of the animal. But I wrote it for the skeptics who don't want to believe in anything. And then I've come up with a solution that the fence sitters enjoy, and then of course the believers have their own interpretation. And I kind of leave you with, tie into Ripley's, a believe it or not situation. I just present the facts.
Let's talk about the swamp ape.
Okay.
Florida Beer has a beer named after the swamp ape.
There's actually even a band, although they call it skunk ape, which is one of the terms we do down there, and relating to the animal's ostensible smell. But I think that's kind of rude. The animal doesn't always smell. Some sightings are not, including one of my own down there. They can't detect the odor of the animal. So I kind of liked swamp ape, plus it ties into what they call the animal called the Oreopithecus, which I think it derived from. Now, if I don't, here we go with those $10,000 words, so I'm sorry, folks, but which was a fossil ape that existed in the Mediterranean that lived in the swamp. They call it a swamp ape, and I think that's where our swamp ape came from.
What does the swamp ape look like?
It looks like a rather large, human-sized, bipedal, hairy creature, resembling a primate ape. And its footprint is not too dissimilar from that of a human, except that it's much, much wider in the area below the toes, which I think is an adaptation to help it swim, since it's semi-aquatic, and also walk on the wet, swampy type territory, so it's sort of like a snowshoe effect.
Rick, your book, of course, is pretty popular or known around this area.
In the immediate area, yes.
Right. Let's talk about your book.
Okay. My book, The Graves of the Golden Bear, Ancient Fortresses and Monuments of the Ohio Valley. Okay. That pretty much describes the overall content, but there's a lot more to it than that. My research spans about 40 years in this area of archaeology and history that you don't get in archaeology or history classes. All the information that I use is traceable and primary sources wherever I can get primary sources. I use endnotes to show that I'm not making this stuff up. It's all out there. Or it was at one time. In many cases, the fortresses have been destroyed and the materials used for other structures, usually railroads. There were 45 stone fortresses along the Ohio and Monongahela valleys. None of them, except one, can be found at all today, and that one is endangered today. The 2 I started out with were at Charlestown, Indiana, and Merriam, Indiana, and the legend that there were 10 or 12 fortresses that ran that line between those 2 points. So I did a story about that in Ancient American Magazine, and one of the readers responded, I think I have something you need to see. So I went to his place, and yes, there are anomalous stone walls on his place. I thought, that's kind of interesting. So I went home and I put a ruler across Merriam and what we call Devil's Backbone of Charlestown, and his place fell right on the line. So there is that much what they call a priori evidence or hypothesis to support this theory that there really were these 10 or 12 fortresses across the state. In 1937, Eli Lilly, the grandson of the colonel who founded the pharmacy company, had enough of the business and he wanted to become an archaeologist, or at least support archaeological digs. So he went to Merriam and he went to Devil's Backbone and performed digs with registered, credited archaeologists, and they found some anomalous evidence. They didn't find the fortresses because they were already long gone. So you have to go back further in history to find the documentation that they were there. So I've done that. It's all in the book. And even from maps of 1716, which the cover image is derived from one of those, some of them are mentioned in that map in 1716. And then you have characters like George Rogers Clark asking the local native chiefs who built those fortresses. And the chiefs would say, well, they called themselves Welsh. They were tall, red-headed, and blue-eyed, and they were such a pain in the butt we had to round them up and kill them. So that is the standing legend, as it's told about, as Dana Olson titled his book, Prince Madoc and the Legend of the White Indians. Yeah. So that was kind of my starting point. And there are a lot of other entries in the book that pertain to how it has been approached by science/archaeology, which are not necessarily the same thing. But the book is primarily Ohio Valley, but because of the overtones to pre-Columbian contact with Europeans, I had to go research some of the European stuff and then look for correlations that came about. And there were a lot of those too.
If somebody can't make your book signing, where can they purchase your books? Online?
Well, we're both on Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
Yep.
And I'm seriously thinking about putting my book, for those who would like a signed copy, up on up on eBay.
Is yours available as ebook?
No, it's not available as an ebook yet, although the publisher is working on that.
Yep. Mine is Kindle, Nook, Smashwords, Diesel, iBooks, Google Books. It's all, just about anything you can name. It's also available on Amazon UK.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you,
us.
Chris.